Okay, good morning.
Hello.
This week, I don't have a lot of slides to go through. I'll just talk about progress, but it's very cool stuff. Um, so last week, a couple of things that happened are the game Drake Black's Quake Tactics game, which is like a what do you call this kind of game?
I would say the round-based strategy.
Yeah, yeah.
eh,
Yeah, so that using Quake 3D models, it's very cool. But he dropped a demo yesterday. Make sure if you didn't catch that, there's a link to it there. And then also yesterday or a couple days ago, we talked a bit about the Open Asset Import Library last week, and I created an ultra project with imported that library imported into it, and I set up like a skeleton of like the beginning of some loading code, and I uploaded that here in the programming forum so that you guys can take a look at it and see what you think and try it out. But most of so Tuesday, Monday I was out of town. Tuesday I did just bug reports, and then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday I worked on terrain mesh layers. This is what I'm calling it. This is the successor to the Leadworks vegetation system, and this is designed to handle millions of trees, plants, rocks, and whatever other stuff you have lying around on the ground. And it allows you to just paint forests onto the landscape. The implementation for this in Leadworks, I used a geometry shader to generate the instances, the visible instances. In this, I'm using a compute shader. I know I said I was going to do like a straight port of the Leadworks code over, but then once I realized, hey, maybe I can use a compute shader for this, and the results were very good. LOD is built into this. I think Leadworks I believe it only had like the full resolution model, and then the billboards that were automatically generated. I don't think I'd have to like go back and check and look more closely, but I don't think it supported LODs. But this one does. You can have you can have up to four levels of detail, and what's really why you need a special system like this? Why not just put a bunch of 3D models? It basically comes down to memory usage. We're talking like millions and millions of instances. So one instance in the mesh layer system only takes 1 bit. The only memory it takes is 1 bit, not a byte, a bit. And that bit just says, does an instance exist here or not? A model, on the other hand, an instance of a model is going to require 64 bytes on the GPU just for the orientation and some other and color and some other data. And then it's also going to require more memory in system memory, but I'm not counting that. So if you have a 4096 by 4096 mesh layer, that's only going to consume 2 megabytes of data. If you tried to do that with 3D models, with individual instances of models, that would be 16 million models, and it would be a gigabyte of video memory. So as those numbers get bigger and bigger, you can imagine that it just becomes way too much. So each mesh layer instance uses about 500 times less GPU memory than individual models would. And I have a video here. I think this was recorded yesterday, actually. This will show the current implementation, which I'm very happy with. You can see the LOD changes happening. And you can also see on the edges, on the left and the right edges, you can see the culling happening. I have it like pulled in, so it's culling them too soon. But you can see just how fast that is. It's just instantaneous. There's no delay at all. There's no latency at all on the culling. and it just works really, really well. I'm very, very pleased with the results that I'm getting so far. This was 3 days of work, and I had a cold one of those days. So if we go by our rule of Vulkan takes about 5 times longer to do anything with, then that would be 2 weeks worth of work with Vulkan. So I'm very happy that I was able to get this out very quickly. Get this far at least. And this was the most complicated step. There's a lot of little details to take care of still, but that's by far, this was the real meat of the problem.
This looks really awesome, to be honest. But do you need all the LODs, or it's optional? So you can also use just a normal model, for example.
It's up to you. It's
Okay.
a maximum of 4, but you can just use the single model if you want. That might be appropriate for grass and rocks and small things.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember Lightworks generated billboards and LODs automatically because I think by default didn't support like LEDs for normal models. So the vegetation system, I think, did that on the vegetation layer. So I guess my question is, does the engine, if there's no live model of a tree, right? Let's say you went Sketchfab and got a tree, but there's no like LED model, will the engine create a live model and do the billboard effect like Lightworks used to?
I'm wondering, should that be part of the vegetation system, or should that be a feature in the model, in the asset editor, where you can just generate the billboard images for any model?
Actually, that actually will be better this way, because I'm actually very lazy and I don't make LED models because they're time consuming. So if I can just have an auto magic button that does it for me, that'd be great.
Yeah, it would also be nice to
A
have
more general feature would be preferred over just being part of the terrain system.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I can imagine that being useful in a lot of areas.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Just separated would be the best and the big improvements. So you can use it for every other model as well, like the other say.
Okay. What's actually I think the system is really interesting because when I first started working with vegetation in Leadworks, I just had a terrain tool, and I just picked some random points within, if you had a circle highlighted and you click the mouse, I picked some random points within that circle and put some trees down. And then I had the distribution of trees was really bad, and I had trees on top of other trees, and I was like, okay, I need to check and see if there's a tree within the space of, for each one. I need to check if there's trees around it before I put it down. And it was making a really bad distribution. And then I was walking by an orchard or something where they had trees planted in rows. And I looked at that and I was like, okay, so they're spacing the trees out so that each tree has enough sunlight and water and nutrients and stuff. And in nature, it also spaces things out. I mean, there's a lot of variation, but if you average it all, it kind of averages out to a grid, because each tree basically repels. The trees basically repel each other like molecules. And so that's how I started devising the original vegetation system. So the idea here is you lay out a grid of instances, and then you have a formula that adds some randomness to the rotation and position of each instance, and you end up, and it totally breaks up. It does a really good job of breaking up the grid appearance. And so, but each instance's position orientation can be determined but it's not stored in memory. It's just using kind of a randomization formula. So I'll show you what this looks like in code. In Leadworks, we did not have any code access to the vegetation system. It was just purely something you set up in the editor. In Ultra, we do have access. And so first you load a model, and then you add a mesh layer to a terrain like this, and it returns an integer for the layer, just like material layers. You can get the orientation of a single instance like this, get mesh layer instance position, and you specify the layer and then the instance that you want, which is by the x and y coordinate, or x and z, I guess. You can do the same thing for rotation and scale. You can hide and show a single instance. So, like if you chop down a tree, you can hide it and then replace it with another tree, with a tree model in its place, and make it fall over or whatever you want to do. And then you can also retrieve all the instances within a specified area. So if you want to find all the trees or whatever it is within a certain bounds, you can do it with that command.
You also maybe instant command, for example, that you get all instances in a area with is determined by the distance. So for example, you have the player position or the player vector, and then a float value, and get all these trees which are nearby this in this area.
So within a sphere?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we could do that.
I think this would be also great, so you don't need to have bounds, so you just set a float value like a distance, and everything below this distance is getting inserted into this vector.
Yeah, so you just specify a position and a radius.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think we can do that. And then the results. This is from Leadworks, but this is what the results are going to look like. Again, these trees are in a grid actually, but you can't see them. And you just like paint the areas where you want the trees to appear, and that says that under the hood, that's saying, okay, these instances are active, are visible. And that's how this whole system works. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I think it's going to be really great.
All right. How would you prevent it? You can see like that platform has grass growing through it. How would you prevent that?
Don't paint grass right there.
Well, what happens if you can't? Can you get micro and just like because in Leadworks you only had to control so amount, and then you kind of had to like work around the vegetation kind of bit. But if you like wanted grass right up to that edge to the concrete platform, but you didn't want it in the concrete platform, would it be like a way that can just
At that
mess
point,
that out?
At that point, it'd probably be better just to place a model there, if it needs to be like that precise. Just place a conventional model of the grass.
I mean, what you could do maybe is to get the AABBs and check if this intersects, or get this from the AABB, the how it's called, the bounds, so you can hide them. This would be maybe an option. So
How would you control that?
It's for ourselves. I just would create a component or something which checks the terrain and disables everything what is in this bounds of this of the AABB. I mean, you showed us in the slide before that we can access the position, and
I mean, you can.
And I think you also would be possible to get the bounds from AABB, or so you could create the bounds from an AABB. This actually an AABB.
Well, you could get all the instances, and then you can get their position and the rotation, and then you can get their bounds of the original model. We also need a command to retrieve the layers, get mesh layer model. We need to be able to retrieve that too, or maybe get mesh layer instance bounds or something.
But I think, like you said, don't paint on this area where the thing is, so you have no grass. But to be honest, in Leadworks it was a bit hard. So you have sometimes a bit more space than on another position.
Yeah, there is a bit of a with grass, especially. It's better to have big clusters of grass, like fairly large clusters of grass. That will that and especially in leadworks, like that tended to be faster than having lots and lots of small individual clusters of grass. I think that same principle will still apply, but maybe not to such, but maybe to a maybe less extreme.
I suggested something. I think it's already something like a year ago. So basically, something like that you can get the positions from a material which you painted on the terrain, and just use this and check if there is a tree or not, or then you can hide this. This would be also an option.
Yeah, it would also be nice to have somehow have like grass and stuff linked to a material, so that the input for whether the model exists is based on the material applied at that point. I'm not sure how to control that yet, but that would also be a really nice feature. So, like, if you paint grass material, then the grass models just automatically populate.
But yeah, I mean, this looks great. It's a big improvement. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a shot from
Yeah.
Leadworks, of
Looks
course,
great.
but yeah,
Yeah, I know, but the also the mesh that what you have created the video with. So
yeah, I'm very very happy with that actually. The compute shader did a very nice job. That was a
I found the post which I created. I posted in the chat. This was the suggestion what I did like a few months ago. There you also can see the grass is on the asphalt of the street which I painted. It's in this chat here, in this general
okay.
voice.
Just leave it on paint layers.
I'm not sure if something
Okay.
like this is possible, that you get actually from the texture the positions, right? And then you can hide or show this.
Yeah. There's a few different ways that could work. That is a good idea. Has anybody tried out the asset import library in Ultra that I uploaded?
Not yet. I had many things to do, but I will take a look into it within this weekend.
I'm not really too familiar with it, so I don't know like where I would start.
Well, a few people downloaded it. This is the spam that you guys don't see. And it actually looks like pretty straightforward. I think it's divided up into like entities and multiple meshes per entity. So it seems like it very closely matches our design already. So it should be not too difficult to get models in. But I just wanted to upload that and let people play with it. I was very concerned about whether we would be able to load additional files from different sources, like a zip file or a remote server, because that's really super important. Apparently, it does have a way to override the in-outs, the I/O system, so that's good.
Can you just refresh on what problem does this solve? Because I know we had like conversations about like how GLTF, although it's very flexible, it's kind of limited for development purposes.
Well, there's
Because
two different things going on. I think in our conversation last week regarding GLTF, I think you guys, some people might be underestimating like how complex PBR materials are, and a few other issues. Like okay, for example, like Blender does not support DDS files. It doesn't. Blender supports DDS files using the DXT5 compression format, which is from like 20 years ago. But BC7, okay, BC7 compression format takes the same space as DXT5, but it doesn't have the visible compression artifacts that DXT5 has. BC5 compression format is the only compressed texture format that will give you artifact-free normal maps. BC6 is the only compression format that will support HDR images. So BC7 has been, it's the only thing you should be using for like your base colors, textures, and it's been around since, it came with DirectX 11, so I think it's been around since 2009. So Blender does not support, and their attitude towards it is very flippant. If you like, I've checked on it on the forums. Like some people request it, and they're just like, "Oh, this is, if enough people vote for it." But it's like, I mean, I don't know why they don't care about it because it's artifact-free texture compression, and texture compression is a requirement in games. And it's better to be artifact-free than to have compression artifacts, and it's 15 years old. So that's why I say Blender does not support DDS files, and that means so first of all, your ping textures are not going away. If you're using Blender, you still need to use ping in Blender because unless you want compression artifacts in your DDS files. Okay. Go ahead.
no, it's because I think the main problem was that like each GLTF needed to needed to I'm sorry. Each GLTF needed to have its own material, so you couldn't share materials between one GLTF to another.
Yeah.
And that was one of the problems.
Yeah.
And another problem you had in like the alpha version, like a way a while ago, was the ability to write custom properties to a model. So you could be like, oh, this bottle model, I want it to have the mass of 1 every time I place, instead of making a prefab on it. But you deprecated that because of loading issues or conversion back and forth. Or that would be nice to have back. Or
Yeah.
and then the whole animation splitting in tools make animation a little bit easier. But
Well, okay, so
yeah, there's a lot of things that Levick's there's 2 out of 3 things Levick's did that Ultra Engine does not do.
What also was a part, like last week, it's not possible to save an animation or to save in GLTF, which imported from FBX and saved the animation. So I think this was also one of the problem.
well, if you're 95% of the way there, that last 5% is going to be difficult because that's the stuff that has been put off because it wasn't easy to solve. But rarely is it the right solution to like, okay, we're 95% of the way there. Let's throw everything away and start over. So another thing was like the separate LOD models. I'm not really sure that's a problem because if you're frequently exporting, if you're frequently updating your 3D models, if you're going back and forth between your modeling program and the map editor, then you want that process to be very, very simple, and you want to be able to see the different LOD models very, very easily. I experienced this, recently because I actually used one of Spider Pig's trees for the testing that vegetation system, and I had to fix like one of the materials in one of the LOD models. I can see the appeal of like packing them all together into a single file, but at the same time, if you're repeating that export step many, many times, then it's good to have as few of steps as possible. If we make our own file format and then embed properties like mass and stuff into it, then that means every time you export that model again, you lose all your properties, and you have to set them all again and save the model again. Now with GLTF, it does have the ability to set extra properties in the GLTF file. Mm-hmm. And when those are loaded if you load the GLTF file back into Blender and save it again, those properties actually survive the round trip. It's a feature I was experimenting with in earlier builds, and I removed it just due to time concerns. But that's something that I was planning on expanding on in the future.
Yeah, I mean, because I see the property in Blender and I go, wow, I want to just use this. You can set a lot of things in there, because if you could just set the path, like even if the LOD model like is its own model, you can still like set the path. Be like, okay, LOD 1 is going to be this model, and LOD 2 is going to be this model, and they could just be properties. And if the GLTF property system is pretty much just like something that the developer can use and use to their advantage, I think the engine should support it, and easily too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like instead of like having hard set properties, you can just have like a tab on the asset browser, and you just say GLTF properties, and then whatever's there. So you're not hard setting properties, because there might be a property that I want, but someone else doesn't want.
Right. And then regarding saving animation, it's not impossible to it's difficult because the animation system in there is kind of complicated, but it's possible. I just have to spend the time on it. It's definitely harder to save that into the GLTF file than my own file, but again, it's like we're most of the way there.
No, I think GLTF is the way. You just need to let us be able to use its flexibility to our advantage.
Yeah. There's only one GLTF file type of file that I have not been, that our loader has failed on, and those are those make human models.
Are those VRM models, or
no? They're GLTF. There's nothing wrong with them. They're valid models. They load in Microsoft's 3D object viewer and some other programs. So it's my mistake. But that can be fixed in the future. I'm not going to spend time on it right now because there's a lot of other stuff I'd rather be doing. But I mean, every loader for a file format is going to occasionally have files that fail, even if they're valid files. Those are the only ones I've ever seen out of all the ones that we've tested and used. So it could be possible. I'm not completely opposed to replacing our GLTF loading code with this ASIMP library. I'm not going to be like, no, I spent so much time on this. I mean, if their loader is able to load things that we cannot, then maybe it's a good idea. But how many GLTF files does our loader work with that theirs fails at? Like, are we just
Right.
exchanging one set of problems for another?
Right.
And so with the, I don't know what the problem is in the load in our GLTF loader for those particular files. It's a complicated issue because it has to do with like skin binding matrices and stuff, which are very complicated. But there's a chance that it can be fixed in the future if there are problems loading GLTF files with ASIMP in the future. If we switch over to ASIMP, first of all, we're not going to know there's problems until we're already committed to it, because we have to use it for quite a long time before we get to know it. If there are problems in it, there's a lower likelihood that it will ever be fixed by by me at least. I don't think I will be able to fix their loading code if there is a problem with it. So there's that's a consideration. How responsive would the developers be in that situation? I don't know. And then finally, I have like some extensions that I've added of my own into our GLTF files. Like for example, there's an extension that specifies that the triangles make up quads if you take every two of them and make them into a quad. That's how we're able to store quads in GLTF, because otherwise it doesn't support quads natively. And it's still a valid GLTF file that other programs can load. If we switch over the loader over to ASIMP, then we'll no longer have those custom extensions. So at that point, we probably would need our own file format, just to save things like that. So that's why I just wanted to upload this and let people play with it and see what they come up with, and let them experiment with it first, and then we'll proceed from there. The last thing regarding the material sharing, the shared materials. Embedded materials in a GLTF file have a name along with them. It's optional, but they usually have a name with them. So what we could do, we could change it so the loader preferentially loads a material file by that name if it exists in the same directory. That might be a good feature to have, and that would eliminate the main problem that Spider Pig was referring to.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the real task is to make the GLTF format work more for games than just loading models to look at, and actually being usable and also very helpful. And since it's just a JSON file, it's quite easier to do like those kind of things.
I think both of the solutions got their advantages. So yeah, if you use ASIMP, you have like 20 or 25 other file formats you can just import without any trouble. For example, you can also import Blender files, you can import FBX, you can import the other stuff. But as Josh said, it's also valid if you have problems with it. So you need to have the creators of ASIMP fix this instead of you fixing it for yourself. So yeah.
Well, the fact that they support so many libraries, that actually is something that like scared me, or they support so many formats. That's something that actually like kind of scared me away. The Blender import support is deprecated, which is good because it's an undocumented, constantly changing file format. So I don't think anybody should try to import Blender files except Blender. So that was a good decision. I actually agree with that. They support a lot of file formats that are, like Doom 3, MD5 files and stuff. And I look at that list, and it seems like they're just trying to they're trying to make the list as big as possible. If it only supported like 5 or 6 file formats, I would actually have like that would actually make a better impression on me. There are two things that they support that are, or three things they support that are very interesting to me. One is this could be a way for us to natively support FBX file loading in the engine, just have it built in, which it's not, I don't recommend using FBX, but a lot of people have a lot of files in that format, so that would be pretty handy to have. And then it also supports STL and step file formats, which are those are for CAD models. That is very interesting to me as well, and I would like to see like how good the support for all three of those file formats is, as well as the GLTF. So it's a complicated problem, and those are sort of all the ramifications. If we do end up, it is tempting to just skip all the bullshit and implement my own 3D model format, because I can do that in an afternoon and it'll be good. But if we do that, then we're kind of changing the workflow and we're adding an extra step in the process. And so if somebody's repeatedly exporting 3D models and editing them a lot, then that's going to add some extra burden to the workflow, perhaps. So I don't know. That's why I just wanted to put this out there and let people see what people come up with, and then we can have a more intelligent discussion, more informed discussion about what we should do, if anything.
Another option would be, but it's also a bit more murk, I think, that you just create an interface for an object loader, where you can load objects with, and then you can create your own object loader with this interface, and you can create maybe an assemb object loader with this interface, and make a setting field in the editor which importer you want to use, for example.
Yeah.
So you can have different importers with
or if
different sources.
One really ugly solution that might be effective is the GLTF files. They have a field where their exporter is typically listed, and I'm guessing in those make human files it's probably going to say something like exporter equals Adobe Make Human version blah blah blah. It would be possible for my GLTF loader to detect those files and then hand it off to the assemb GLTF loader if it detects those, and then let it handle it, because I mean that's kind of it's a dirty solution, but that would actually be something that would solve the problem.
But Make Human is kind of dead, or? I mean, if I want to go to the website, it's not reachable for me, for example.
Well, the files are still around.
Oh, I would rather look maybe for Mixamo or something, where you have a library with actually really good models and with many animations that the people can load this, because I think many of independent developers will use Mixamo to get their models and characters and animations.
I'm just saying, if there's a type of file that we know our loader currently has a problem with, it could be a possibility. It could be possible to like detect those and then hand them over to the assemb GLTF loader as an alternative, and the user never sees the difference. Mm-hmm. Also, regarding we also talked about the plugin system quite a bit, and I think my outlook on that for the immediate, for the next month or so, is there's not really a problem. So if I just don't take any action then there's no problem. So I mean, probably the most, what I might do is just like remove that page from the documentation before the final launch. And then, it's there, but it's not hurting anything.
Right. And then wait for someone to be like, hey, I'm trying to I want the
Yeah.
engine to load this format. What should I do? And then you could be like, oh, well, you do this, and then just say, yeah, I haven't touched it in a while, but
Yeah, and see if it's
yeah,
really needed.
right. Well, and then also they can find things that like where you're not aware of, and then we can reevaluate the plugin system.
Yeah.
Because I think most people want an extension system. They want the editor to do more things.
Right.
Also, the something different is the prefabs are not showing up at the right place.
Okay. If there's a bug report, then I'll be investigating it.
I'm under the impression you're waiting till the vegetation system is done and you're gonna implement it in the editor to do the editor bugs and suggestions and things we talked about, correct? Because you're not focused on the editor at this point.
I spent all day Tuesday fixing bugs.
Well, I'm just talking about like the ideas we had about the selection, um, this selection tool, and I tried and I played with the prefab system a little bit, and I think it's not as intuitive as it should be. For one thing, you can't save a map as a prefab. I know you probably did that because the whole hierarchy thing. But when you want to like edit a prefab, you have to load them. You can't just load the prefab in and then edit it and then resave it like you could in Legworks. You actually have to like.
Oh, if you load
Make
a
a new
prefab,
one.
okay, that's
Yeah.
that needs
I
to change.
Yeah, I kind of want the prefab thing. I want to kind of just want to make new prefab, and then I get like a little editor where I can just drag things in, set up the flow graph for that prefab, and just save it. But that might be a little bit too much work for a first implementation. But that's how I expect a prefab system to work. Not
Yeah.
Something really cool would also for prefab if you have the option to create a normal entity out of them, so that you use the prefab, for example, as a blueprint.
Well, I'm not clear what the difference between a normal entity and a prefab is.
Yeah, you save the prefab. So, for example, think about this: you make a game, which is a crafting game. So you have loot boxes, different loot boxes. And if you would prefab for it, how would you save the items out of all these loot boxes? Because you save the prefab as prefab itself, right? And load it as prefab itself. But in this case, it's hard to put different items in different boxes, for example. So an option to create a normal entity in the scene would be really good.
So you're saying like treat it as like basically like a template object.
Optional, yes, so that you have the option to use it as a template. It's not that it should be a template for itself, but you should have the option to treat it as a template.
Should it show up in the like in the in the display of like available objects? Well, no, because you've already got it in the asset browser.
That's fine. It's just an function, like you can call that instead of creating the prefab in the scene. Like I think it's called prefab, right? So you could have an integer or not integer, and a Boolean value if it's set to true, or some other flag that you can just treat it as a template instead of a prefab.
Okay. I'll have to think about that more. Yeah, if I can fit in the like the selection rectangle, with the mouse, and like also, any bugs with the prefabs, of course. I figure
Yeah.
I want to spend about another week of just fixing whatever bugs there are that I can fix, and then put 0.9.5 out on the default branch. So that'll solve the major problem of AMD cards not working.
Right.
And this is a nice time to do that because the mesh layer system isn't going to be it's not going to be finished for it's probably going to take 3 weeks to finish. So I don't have to like add any major new features right now, and I can just like work on that in the background and at the same time fix whatever bugs there are to make the stable 0.9.5 release.
Right. Yeah, I think for 0.9.5, I think we just need to improve the prefab experience, fix the bugs, and add the mouse selection tool. And I think
So that's
that'll be good enough.
required.
Yeah, like anything editor related. Anything editor related, like well, because right now there's just like a lot of things like, oh, like this is weird. Well, the one thing I came across weird, I didn't report it because it was a design decision, more of a bug. When you go to, um, like scale a brush, the brush doesn't turn orange because it's making the face orange. You know what I mean? Because in the 3D view, you can scale things by the face.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but when you go to the 2D view, it's like bold white. So it doesn't look like it's selected, but it is. But I think it's
Okay.
rendering the orange color to the face. And I didn't know that was a design decision, or it's supposed to be like, or wasn't supposed to be like that.
So you're saying that when a face is highlighted in the 3D view, you can't see it when you're looking from like an orthographic view. You can't see it when you're looking
Well,
at the side.
I think I can show you if you want to
Sure.
take a look. Let me update. Let me just share my screen. It's screens. Sure. Okay. Okay, so also the I noticed that the preview actually works. It's just a little bit slow. Like you have to click on it and then it'll generate. But so I go to create a box, right? And then make a box. And I want to scale it. See how it turns white, but I could still scale it. But if I hit translation, it's yellow or orange. If it's rotation, it's orange. When it goes scale, it's bold white. I expect this to be orange. But I think
Oh, so it's not highlighting the.
yeah, but I think it's because it's highlighting, because in 3D view, it highlights based on what face you're grabbing. But in 2D view, did you not actively highlighting the face? See, it actually turns orange if the face is highlighted.
Yeah, I think what
See,
it is it's showing.
yeah,
Okay.
so it's correct. It's just I expect in 2D view, I expect this to be orange.
Okay.
Yeah.
You think the whole thing should be orange all the time?
When it's highlighted, not all the time, but when it's highlighted, like I expect it to be the same.
Yeah, that would be nice. I think it's because this is using like a flat surface and this is a wireframe view, and I just don't. I need to like make a separate like highlight mode for the wireframe.
Also, you cannot select things when in vertex mode. So if I want to like in vertex mode, I want to click on this, I can't click on. I have to go to translation mode. I think that's a bug.
Okay.
And,
that's vertex mode?
Yep, that's vertex mode. So
okay.
Go to vertex mode and click a brush. Yeah, it's just these little things that, I want to be able to just shell out a room as fast as I could in Leadworks or Hammer. And
well, Leadworks doesn't have a vertex tool.
Well, it says I have a vertex tool.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But since we can duplicate like that. If I can select this and then copy this, that would be really helpful. Or delete it. Like if I want all these to go away, I have to select them all manually. I can't just
Yeah, for sure.
yeah. So anything to move the speed of the editor will be appreciated in the next release.
Yeah.
But
It might happen this week. We'll see.
Is it possible, by the way, if we talk about the creation in the editor, is it possible to not snap to the grid if you move an object? For example,
Is there an option in tools under viewport?
Also, you're missing refraction. There's no refraction option.
Oh. Okay, I think
No.
I programmed it. I actually think I programmed a snap to grid feature internally, but I just didn't add the option here. So I think we can do that.
Yeah, it is weird because sometimes I'll be resizing it, and then like it will like not line up to the grid 100%, but then I have to like resnap it. I don't know why Windows is being angry. Let's do this one. Also, I wish I can just click in the box to select it. That would actually be helpful.
That would actually be really bad.
Why?
If
Yeah,
you clicked inside the box, because then if you had like a big object behind.
I think it was selected, but I couldn't because it wasn't orange. Trying to recreate the bug. Sometimes, like when I resize it, it will just be off a little bit, and then you have to like resize it. I'm trying to. It's hard. It doesn't always happen. I think it happens in this mode more often.
Are you talking about when you change the grid size? Okay, now make the grid bigger. Make the grid bigger. Make the grid bigger. Okay, and now it's not lining up.
Yeah, it doesn't line up to this line.
That's a feature. That's a feature. No, I'm serious. That like it's designed so in LEDWorks it would just snap to that wherever the grid position is. In Ultra, and I did that because I was lazy. In Ultra, I was like, okay, I wanted my original, desired behavior was to make the movements change by increments of the grid.
Mm-hmm.
So like. Okay, now move it down a little bit. Okay, and let it go. No, stop lining it up to move it to one of the minor lines.
Like here?
Yes. And now make the grid bigger. Yes. So it's supposed to move in increments of the grid space. That was my desired behavior. Rather than snapping to that's what I want. And then so now we can debate whether that's the right decision or not, but I just want to make it clear that this is the desired behavior.
How can you make the grid bigger or smaller?
The square bracket keys is the fast way.
Yeah, okay. I do that a lot. Yeah, I mean, it is a design choice. I'm just used to having it be one way, and I've been doing it for that way. But
how does it work in Hammer?
I think it works the same way as LEDWorks. Like it just snaps to nearest grid.
Yeah, you might be right.
I thought it was weird at first, but once I understood what was happening, it wasn't too weird to change if I wanted it on a larger grid, I just started on a larger grid. And I don't know, it's weird at first, but you figure out real quick how you can shrink the grid size to line it back up with a bigger one.
Also, I reported this. You can't create a camera at the origin. It's there, but you don't see it. But if I put the camera over here, you can see it.
Oh well, this is that feature so that people don't. Yeah, it doesn't create it at all, or it's just invisible.
It's there.
Okay.
It's there.
Try.
It's just
Okay,
invisible.
set the position to. Oh, I actually I think I know why. Now
Now I
set
can
it
see
back to 0.
Now I can.
I think I know why. Okay.
What feature? What
Okay.
feature is that?
Well, yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a weird one.
And then again, the only way, like, if I want to, I could save it to a prefab like this. Let's say I save this as a prefab, and go like test, right? And I go, oh no, when it's a prefab, so I edit the prefab, and I make the edit. Let's say I make a sprite to it. Do I have to parent everything to the camera? Like if I go over here, can I parent to the camera?
Yeah, you would need one top level entity. What happens if you
Yeah.
hit save? If you go to just press save?
If you get this dialog, and I can only save as a map.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, we need to change that.
Yeah, I was running into that. Like, I had to, if you right click on the prefab, you can then save a new prefab.
Yeah,
But
yeah. You have to like save as a you have to override it. And also, I don't like being taken out of my map to work to edit a prefab. That's why I kind of want like a separate window for it. But
Yeah, I've thought about that, but it's the prefabs basically support everything that the maps support. Just
and
about.
you don't want to remake a map editor.
Well, it would. I mean, it might be a map editor within a map editor.
Yeah.
Well, what if we had tabs for the maps? Like you could have like a tab for your map, or even edit multiple maps at the same time. But also you could have multiple prefab tabs up there too if you needed to work on a prefab. It is weird to open and close if you're trying to jump back and forth for, I guess, rapid iterations.
Yeah, and we just keep the same UI, and then we just use, instead of like switching the tab, you just have a tab here, and it just
that's why I meant like a tab up there.
Map.
I considered like using tabs like early on in the beginning, and I really did not like it. I can show you why.
I understand why, because because it's so much nicer to have, and it's to do this.
Would it be possible?
We need a way to zoom in and out of the files, I guess, quicker.
What do you mean?
Like, because if I wanted to switch to a prefab, I don't want to save the map, switch over and edit a prefab, save it, switch back to the map. I don't know. It feels like too many extra steps, like way too many extra clicks.
Okay.
Would it be possible to open a second editor?
Can we load a second editor? We can load a second editor.
No, I mean in the Steam version.
Would we be able to at least have a double click to open a map file? Is that not a?
Yeah, we should add that.
Because that folder button actually really annoys me, having to go over there to open up a new map when the folder browser is on the right.
Yeah. Well, one thing you can do, you can steal from Valve Source 2 Hammer, is if you want to edit a prefab, it actually like puts like a filter over the main map, and then it's weird. I would have to like load up Steam and everything to show you, but so pretty much if you have a map, let's just open the map. I think it's this one, right? If you have a map, right, and then you have a prefab, I'm just gonna, do I have a model? No, I don't. I'm just gonna create a box real quick. So let's pretend, oh, this bug is still here, where the last selected.
I think it's because of the directional light. It has a very large bounds.
Yeah, but it's still bugs. Anyway, so let's say
I
like
agree.
this is my
Oh.
prefab, and I want to get like edit prefab whatever. Right click it and hit like edit prefab whatever. The background will become like grayed out, and it'll focus the attention on this, and that will indicate to the user you're on prefab editing mode. And then
Yeah.
I mean, it's a stretch, but that's a solution. Then
Oh, it's like
tabs.
if you can't describe the behavior in like 5 words, it's probably too complicated.
Yeah.
Is my feeling. Okay, so it seems like maybe the best approach would just be to duplicate all the properties that appear in the entity properties. Can you click over like on a box or something over there on the right? All the properties that appear there, perhaps those can appear also be duplicated in the asset editor when a prefab is loaded.
So like here, and then
Yeah.
instead of this.
I mean, it would be duplicate, content, but it's not. I mean, that might be the cleanest solution, and you wouldn't be able to do everything that the map editor does
No, I
within
mean
that interface. But
I don't need 4 viewports for it. Like if the map
yeah,
editor was just a single viewport like this, no console.
well, we
Let's
already have a prefab editor. If you go to the asset browser and find your prefab,
right. Oh. All right. Yeah. I mean, I can't
you
see anything.
can open them in that interface. And I'm saying like we could add like you wouldn't be I guess you wouldn't be able to create like new entities and add it to it, but you would be able to adjust all the properties within that.
I kind of want. Well, it's. I guess. I guess to adjust values, this is good. I think like if you wanted like to add like actually edit the prefab, then you would load it into a new map. But because this would be good for like quick editing, like I think I have a player's prefab. Oh, no, that's player. Like here I have a player. It's not loading the component for some reason, but
Maybe we could well it's not displaying it because there's no
yeah,
mechanism. We could also maybe add that little plus button in here somewhere
yeah,
and like then you could add like new entities. That
yeah, and
might be a
also
good
maybe
compromise between like having the full editor and
uh,
having quick access to something.
yeah, but I can't. But this is a pivot. I can't see the pivot.
Well, I need to add like icons to appear
Yeah,
in that.
yeah. And then
I got. Oh,
wait,
sorry.
maybe can I save a prefab? I think I can save a prefab like this. Nope, it crashes.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, do you think we should expand on that interface, or do you think it should be removed entirely?
Um, that's a good question because
It's a little confusing to have a pop-up menu that actually has less
yeah, that's how I'm feeling.
options for the prefab. I don't know if that makes sense.
Maybe when you double click the prefab file, maybe it should treat it as if you're loading a map and just switch over to that map.
Yeah, but then
Yeah.
if you're working on one map and then you
Right.
double click it.
Maybe
Yeah.
open a new window then. New editor window. Load it there.
And I got a minor thing, like when you're editing a prefab, since a prefab needs to have a top level node, the editor shouldn't even allow you to make like 2 parent level nodes. Like there should be some forced limitation there, because otherwise it's not super obvious that that's a limitation.
Or just like if you create something new, like it just like automatically parents it to the top level.
Yeah.
What's already at the top level. That makes sense.
Yeah, and I guess maybe some people might end up wanting a feature to be able to swap a node for that top level node, but Yeah, it should force you to only have one. It shouldn't allow you to be in like an invalid state, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking, like, have the root node be invisible. Oh,
That's another option. But then you wouldn't be able to
Yeah, like
edit
have
it.
it a prefab root. Oh, well, it could just be like this is the prefab node. I don't know.
yeah.
That's a little weird because that's adding a special
Case.
purpose. I don't know.
I mean, you
That
could
might not be the best solution.
Yeah, so
create
you
a
save a
filter.
model as a prefab and you expect it to be a model and then you load it and it's a pivot with a model as a child.
True.
Yeah.
I mean, you could create a filter for the scene editor, and when the filter is selected, then you could check if there is more than one root node, and pop a dialog box that it's not possible to save this as a prefab.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah. Something needs to be there, is all I'm saying. I don't know exactly the implementation details.
No, start with the design and then we figure out how to make it work. But yeah, it is a tricky problem, and I am open to like, if we find if we can find another way, whether it's in source or something. If we get some ideas from it, then I am open to improving this.
Source, it's just a map file, like Ultra Engine LibWorks, but in Hammer I can load multiple maps at once, so it's not a.
And they're
huge
separated by
deal.
tabs.
In Hammer, actually, the windows within Windows. In Hammer 2, in Source 2 tools, I think they're tabs.
I'd probably rather use like a combo, like a drop-down box for the select
In
current
Unity.
selected map.
Oh yeah, that'd be good. Like a combo box, like current scene, and then you just drop down here, and you just get it like the asset browser, where
Yeah, 'cause tab interfaces, they waste a lot of vertical space.
yeah, if we could just like have like a drop down menu like here,
Or
and
maybe
then
in the footer even
maybe
in the status bar.
maybe I think it'll be more aesthetically pleasing.
I think in the status bar is not that good because
That's
most
a
of the
very
people
minor.
don't expect functions in the status bar.
Yeah, I kind of think it should be with.
That is a very top level thing. It's
Yeah.
basically what you're working on.
Or it could
Right,
just be,
like
or it could be a menu in the menu.
We have a lot of space, and I know you like it clean in the top bar, but there's a lot of space, so I
Yeah,
think no one will be mad if you have a drop down box there for the editor, right?
but I'll be mad.
Instead of tabs.
What I don't what if it's cluttering, but it's actually useful. If people are actually using it and it's actually useful, then then it's worth the space.
Yeah, actually, like my main concern would be like if we do that, we want to make really sure that that's what we want to do because that would require a lot of things that are currently sort of a global setting to be put into a class,
Right.
like all the the viewport panels and
Right.
I guess
So-
those would just get reused, but well.
The problem is that it's annoying to go back and forth between multiple maps and prefabs.
Well, you don't need to create a thing. You just can create. You don't need to create a class for it, Josh. Just make a combo box, yes. And if you select something new, the editor is saving the state of your current scene, yeah.
And then
Open
save it
this-
and
Open the new thing, yeah, and so you can open and close.
Well, I was thinking more in terms of keeping them all in memory all at once, rather than saving it and reopening it.
Yeah, I'm more up to that. I think you can do the save load a new map with just the extension system as it is, because you just tell the editor to save and load a new map every time. But I kind of want to be like, oh, I'm working on this. Oh, I got to edit this prefab, and I just go load.
We would
and
like
then,
that switching to be as quick, like
Yeah,
instantaneous.
yeah, and then go, yeah. So, and then I go back to my main scene. I test my prefab app. And like, oh, the prefab is, not working, or I want a sprite attached to it, or whatever, or the logic is not working correctly.
Yeah.
I go back to the prefab and work on that.
In
I
Unity,
just want to say, tabs are ugly as hell, but they are extremely functional. Like I would prefer tabs way over a drop-down box, which is always 2 clicks.
The
I
problem
don't
with
know.
tabs
Just
is
saying.
that a lot of people like to fill the tabs, and then it just turns to tab hell.
Okay, but if you're gonna have if you're the kind of person that wants to have 12 different maps open at one time, why would we artificially limit that with like some sort of ridiculous drop down?
Well, if it's drop down, it can be as big as you want because it'll have a scroll bar.
That's
But I'm
true.
saying, like, people expect tabs. They're in my Chrome. I really hate drop downs. I'm just gonna say it because it's literally always at least 2 clicks. Whereas with a tab, I can just click on it. Most apps let you do Control Tab this, just slide through all your tabs if you want. Like I said, they're ugly, but I would actually hate another drop down box. But
I,
that's just my
I
personal
will
opinion.
say that if we were to implement tabs, I guarantee you, like, one absolute requirement is if there's only one tab open, it doesn't show the tabs, because I don't want to look at that. I don't want like this big
Agreed.
empty
I'd be okay with
bar
that.
of like
I
an
don't have a
extra
problem with that.
inch down here of like empty space. They're so ugly.
Agreed.
Oh, and I was actually thinking like if you had just like a little tab, like if you put the tabs between like the forward button somewhere and between the box.
Where's the
Um,
forward? What?
I mean, on the main row, like you don't have to do a whole new row for tabs.
Oh,
Like you could just have a few tabs, and if they shrink, then you can have the little drop down arrow. If you really, I don't know.
horrible UI
I'm
design.
just tossing out ideas, but
No,
I
I
mean,
know they
like,
do.
I
They
think
do
a
stuff
drop
like that in
down box is
browsers and
horrible.
stuff.
I like the combo box as the cleanest version. 2 clicks is not that much, to be honest.
It's friction. You have to. I don't know, but whatever. If you
Yeah,
guys
but
hate it,
I think it'll be a lot quicker for him to implement it if it was just a simple drop down menu.
Well, yeah. I mean, do you want to be? Yeah. Interesting
Um,
discussion. Anyways.
yeah, but the
are
issue
we
is that
talking about quick or right?
but I don't know, but we gotta get something in. But of course, there's all the design issues like how do you load, how do you close a map, how do you? It's then you run into those issues. Like, still, there's no way to delete a texture here, so that's. And now we're talking about
Yeah. How would
deleting.
you actually close? I guess you could go to File, Close, and then it would close that map.
Right, like every
Most
time.
editors have
So
a
the idea.
text.
So the idea is that you go file open, and then you go file open, and then a Dropbox then appears here,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can switch between the two, and then if you hit close, or there should be think there should be like a close
Close. Yeah.
here, and then it'll be grayed out if there's only one, but um, if there's two, it'll be highlighted, and you hit close, and it says, do you want to close such and such map? You hit yes or no.
You are not creating a box like the box creation tool. Instead of a plus, you just make a minus, and then you close the. Then if you press the minus, you close the selected tab.
Yeah.
And another button, so you get one X and one plus, and then you can add open windows to this or close.
Maybe, and then just have a confirmation box if you didn't accidentally press it. Yeah, a lot to think about, but yeah, But I think for right now, if you can just make it so we can save prefabs just by the editor
Yeah.
and mouse selection tool and a way to remove this string without editing the map file
Yeah, for sure.
directly. I think that'll be good. That'll be a good update to the, and plus, I think that'll be a good enough for 0.9.5 for the
Yeah.
editor side at least.
I love these conversations because we always
Right.
I always
And
learn
fix,
something completely new, and we come up with you guys come up with some really good ideas
yeah.
every week.
And to fix vertex selecting. I'll probably report this
Okay.
so it doesn't get lost.
Yeah.
And,
If there's not a bug report for it already, maybe it would be a good idea to add that, because otherwise, there's just too much for me to keep track of.
all right, I'll just make these two one big report.
Also,
Thank you.
I think a good option would be also to make the flow graph in the future, to make the flow graph a bit more powerful. I think many people are actually coming from this, or more people going to this visual coding, or how it's called, like in Unreal, that you can create basically the complete logic with flow graphs instead of any scripts. So you have like input fields for float values, for vectors, and all the other stuff.
Yeah, I'm open to it, and I have some ideas I want to add to it myself. At the same time, I don't know. You also have to be a little bit cautious because, like those. I mean, C4, for example, it had like a complete visual scripting system, and uh, oftentimes you end up with something that neither programmers nor non-programmers understand. Like that can also happen. So
I think the nodes for the flow graph could be just components, except the input nodes. So this would be
you
a bit
mean
more.
without an entity?
I mean, you can have one base entity, and so you can have an internal flow graph for every entity. So you can make an empty, for example, and have a whole flow graph only for this entity. And then you can,
Okay. So basically, that it basically replaces like a component. It basically like generates a component script from that, basically.
for example, so you have input and output values also. So you can have an input field where you can access the logic in this entity from the scene flow graph.
Yeah.
So I think it's like this, or at least when I worked in a bigger company, we had our own engine. I already told it, and the scene has own flow graphs, own logic, and every entity can have an own logic. So you can put then the entity with the logic into the scene flow graph, and the scene flow graph creates and how are these small windows called, where you have the inputs and the output things.
Yeah. I think it's a good idea to pursue in the future, and I'd say like my first concern would be getting C# programming support in, because I know that's something that I think a lot of will get heavily used. And actually, based on like some of the things we were talking about this week, I think it's pretty clear like the reason the thing that a lot of game developers like about C# is it has full garbage collection, and it has IntelliSense in the code editor. So in other words, it's statically typed.
You can have free mind for the things you really want to do. So creating games, and not have to think about, can something happen now if I create an shared pointer for this? Can something be kept alive? Right?
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, I think we'll get the most bang for our buck by adding C# support. But I'm also open to some visual scripting features, stuff like that as well. After that,
it's not really visual scripting. It's more a better overview over your scene graph, because at the moment we have only for the scene a flow graph, and I think it can get really messy if you have complex things, or if you want to make complex things to it. And this would be a cool option to just have for an entity and separate flow graph for its own, so you can deal with all the components in this entity in an own flow graph, because you maybe won't have all this values in the scene flow graph.
Yeah. All right. Anything else, guys?
One thing. I don't know if this is gonna make the 0.9.5 mark, but we also talked about API changes to the interface. And I'm wondering if you're gonna go forward with that, and if so, I have one stipulation regarding that. And that is, can we control when that layer gets drawn?
I don't want to touch it or even think about it until after 095.
Okay, yeah, because I've been kind of playing with Lightworks, and I actually integrated I'm GUI just to see if I could, and I found that I am GUI was actually easy to implement because it uses OpenGL. I don't think you need to do something like Kepler did, where you actually had to like create shaders and such. You can just tell I'm GUI to write the shader for you. You just specify a version and it just works. But the thing is that you have to end the frame right before you sync the. In Lightworks terms, you have to end the frame right when you sync the context, but the UI layer is being drawn after you end your GUI frame, which results with the frame buffer, which results in the GUI being drawn on top of GUI. And I kind of want GUI to be drawn on top.
Let's talk about it after 095. Is that?
Yeah, because just real quick, because I find GUI is actually good for debugging, while your GUI system is actually better for actual menus. That's what I feel and found out.
Okay.
I think
go ahead.
If we talk about GUI, I think GUI also have a really powerful flow graph.
Yeah, it actually has like a lot of like things as like graphs and charts and like sliders and all the like things that are really it looks ugly, but it's really good for like debugging and like trying to like figure out things and visualize things. But I don't think it's very nice or useful for actual like game UI stuff. I think Josh's system has a much better system for that. But just to quickly like display like the frames per second or how much memory you're using or things like that, I think it's really like useful for that. But for sliders and drop down menus and like settings menus and such, I think Josh is much better.
Since Alien Head is here, he posted this video last week, and it's kind of interesting, just because people ask, well, it's fast in these benchmarks, but will it be able to handle like a full scene with lots of different objects? And I knew it would, because I mean, functionally, this is exactly the same as our batch, our unique geometry test. Like this is doing the exact same thing as that test. So we don't have any numbers on here on how this was performing, but his review was pretty happy with it. So this was cool to see, like a very dense scene with lots and lots of different types of objects.
That would have made Lightworks crawl. Like you would begin 10 frames with Lightworks.
Yeah, and I actually have like some ideas of how I can make this quite a bit faster that would specifically affect something like this. So I was happy to see that.
Yeah.
I use the Steam version. We talked about editor, and I think it's only able to allow multiple windows, Josh, because if you use the Steam version from Ultra, you can only have one editor window open.
Yeah, I think that the having multiple maps open at the same time within one instance of the program, I think is probably a better idea, like you guys were saying.
Yeah.
All right. If there are no other questions or anything, then I'll conclude this this week's session.
All right. Let me stop streaming.
All right. Thanks everybody for coming, and have a good week.
You too.